Alright, what is going on, guys? This will be a first for me. Gonna do DFS analysis, daily fantasy for UFC Vegas 46. I gotta do a little bit with format, but I'm more focused on substance, getting the research right and all that. So we'll do it a little bit better with the format in the next couple weeks. But for now, this is the first time. These are DraftKings prices. I do like DraftKings daily fantasy for pretty much all sports. I think it's better than FanDuel's, but FanDuel does do a couple things I like a little bit better. I like how FanDuel has the MVP slot for all competitions. DraftKings only has it for the Showdown Captain mode. I think that with MMA, when you have a small slate, getting that MVP and putting a guy in there who's probably, or girl, who's going to get the finish is important, and it can really sway the fight or sway the pool. I'll give you a perfect example. The one week I had Jai Herbert as MVP. Nobody had him. Knocks out Worthy in the first round. And you have him as MVP. You get a point boost on it. And I think it really just adds some extra variables, extra strategy, separates you from the pack. DraftKings, though, I do like their scoring better overall. I just wish they'd have sub attempts. But enough of that. I'll just go over each fight, go over what I think about them relative to price, and then I'll give you my optimal lineup that I am entering into head-to-heads and other competitions. I will make a couple lineups, but I don't make a ton of lineups. It's not like NBA or NFL where you kind of want to have a couple of these if you're looking to actually do something with it, but I'll just get right into it. So we got first fight of the night, Charles Rosa taking on TJ Brown. Late addition to this card. TJ Brown was initially supposed to take on Mowgli Benitez. He was a sizable underdog in that one. And his price hasn't adjusted too much, even though he is close to a 3-1 favorite in this one. So I do think there is decent value on TJ Brown. I think there might be some overexposure to him because he is just going to be, I'd say he's going to have high ownership only because of the same reason I just said. Price adjustment didn't really catch up with the line. So it's a pretty good value, but Charles Rosa coming in on short notice, I don't know. I've never been a big fan of Charles Rosa, betting him at least. I know he's got the big win one, lose one streak, but I don't like how he spends so much time on his back. He does throw up a lot of submission attempts, but he doesn't seem to get them. His striking's pretty elementary. And TJ Brown, though, the problem is he's been finished a lot, especially outside of the UFC. He's been finished by a lot of regional scene competition. And that one fight that really just sticks out in my mind all the time is the Jordan Griffin. Yeah, I was about to say Jordan Wright, but Jordan Griffin, he takes him down 7 or 8 times, and then he gets submitted from side control, gets caught in a guillotine. He almost got choked out a couple more times because he was just leaving his neck so exposed. So that's the one thing that worries me. In this one, you have Charles Rosa, who's got good submission game off of his back. He will accept the takedown. So I think if TJ Brown wants to wrestle, which I think there's a strong chance because you're preparing for Mowgli Benitez, who's a good striker, I think that the game plan was probably to wrestle. So I don't think it's going to change much, but TJ Brown, if we look at it from a scoring perspective, in his last fight against Kai Kamaka, scored 79.5 fantasy points with a decision win, landed 82 significant strikes in that one. And then in the Jordan Griffin fight, in a loss where he gets submitted in the second round, still got 73 points because he had so many takedowns. So I think with DraftKings pricing, if TJ Brown can just land a couple takedowns, he's going to have top control. Charles Rosa always seems to struggle with wrestlers who have the advantage over him, but if you're a big believer in the streak, Charles Rosa is due for a win. And again, the sub game does really worry me. So you might be able to get a good deal on Charles Rosa if you can, or you can get a good deal on Charles Rosa if you can really talk yourself into it. If you can talk yourself into the Charles Rosa by sub, it could be a huge deal on a 10-card slate. A 10-fight slate. Geez, if you can get that value if he comes through, but I just don't see it. I do like TJ Brown in this spot. I do like him from a DFS perspective. And then another late edition fight, Brian Kelleher taking on Kevin Croom. Kelleher was initially supposed to take on Jakub Kakramanov. He was a decent-sized underdog in that one, or a moderate underdog. He's now, again, same situation, 3-1 favorite over Kevin Croom. Kevin Croom coming back 6,700, cheapest play on the slate. and I agree with it. Kevin Kroom had a great W in his first appearance. He chokes out Roosevelt Roberts in the first round, which I can't get the numbers on because I believe Kroom was smoking weed, so they took the fight away. It's just like, it's kind of like in college where they'll sanction a program, so they just vacate the wins as if they didn't happen. But that happened. He chokes out Roosevelt Roberts. It was impressive. People were happy to see it. But then he fights Alex Caceres, and I didn't wager it on the channel. I didn't pick it or anything, but I do remember betting that fight, just throwing some pocket change on it and just being so disappointed. It just did not go well. Watched it again this morning, and he was just getting bullied pretty much. Lands 16 significant strikes. And the thing is with this one is Kevin Kroom is going to be significantly bigger. This one's going to be at featherweight. Collier, naturally a bantamweight. He has fought at featherweight before and had varying degrees of success, but typically the issue with him is he runs into trouble with bigger guys. But it's also bigger fighters and skilled fighters. You look at the losses for Collier, we're talking long and rangy, but Montel Jackson, Cheeto Vera. He did lose to Ricky Simone pretty handily, just got grapple fucked. But other than that, he's definitely a guy that earns his roster spot. Shows you why it belongs time and time again. And we look at his last performance against Domingo Pilarte, was able to work the wrestling, 125 fantasy points in a decision win. The flip side of it, if he does get bullied, only scored 9 points in a 3-round decision loss to Ricky Simone. But I do think in this one, got to give the striking advantage to Collier. And I do think the grappling advantage as well. Kevin Kroom is one of those just kind of, he's a submission over position type guys. And I think that Callahier's grappling is a little bit more defined. And Callahier's got very good sub-game of his own, so if Kroom gets too overzealous, Collier can lock in that guillotine. And again, it's just more of a, at 7,500, given how much I like Collier to win this fight, and it's a condensed slate, I think that there's a decent amount of value on Collier. Can't really see it on Kevin Kroom, but again, you got to work in that size advantage. Collier has struggled before, so if you can talk yourself into it, 6,700 is the cheapest spot on the slate. So it's worth keeping in mind. And then we got Ramiz Brahimaj taking on Court McGee. It's kind of hard for me to find the DFS value in either side on this one because they're both just middle of the pack price-wise for this slate. But my pick, if you watched my video for this that I uploaded last night, was fight goes to decision, or I gave a couple options in that. I do like Court McGee to win the fight by points if I had a gun to my head, but I just think the fight's going to go decision. You look at Court McGee's history, pretty much all decisions, and he's never been submitted, whereas Ramiz Brahimaj, a lot less experience, fought a lot less caliber of competition, and in his UFC debut he's unable to get the wrestling going, has to strike with Max Griffin, doesn't have success in that one. Then of course the cauliflower ear pops, and that's what we mostly remember that fight from. And then he comes out and he submits Sasha Platnikov in his next fight. But if you look at pretty much all of Brahimaj's fights, they're all either first-round submissions or 1 or 2, I believe, in the second round. He doesn't have a win over 7 minutes into a fight. So it's kind of like you're looking for Brahimaj to submit a guy who's never been submitted early or knock Court McGee out. He's never knocked anybody out. And we've never really seen him in extended striking exchanges. So I could just see this being a fight that goes to decision, maybe 60 significant strikes, no more than 60 significant strikes each way, with some grappling control. And I could just see Court McGee getting a couple opportune takedowns in the second or third if Brahimaj's cardio doesn't hold up. Court McGee rides it out. But ultimately for this one, I just don't see a ton of value either way in the DFS side of things, unless you can talk yourself into Brahimaj getting the finish, likely by submission. But again, Court McGee never been submitted, and Brahimaj never knocked anybody out. Court McGee is 37, but he looked like he was in really good shape in that last fight against Claudio Silva. So not seeing a ton of value either way here, but yeah, that's that. And then Jamie Pickett against Joseph Holmes. Kind of the same deal for me here. A lot of people are on Jamie Pickett because Joseph Holmes is pretty green. He usually has a significant size advantage over his opponents. It's not so much in this one, but there's no way I can pick Jamie Pickett, man, even with plus odds, and especially from a fantasy perspective. If we look at Jamie Pickett's last performance against Laureano Staropoli, who got cut right after that fight, Jamie Pickett scored about 40 fantasy points. I'm pulling it up right here. He scored 65 fantasy points in a win. A lot of clinch work, pushing up against the fence in that one. Landed 47 significant strikes in a fight that really could have gone either way. Before that, he gets starched by Jordan Wright. Or he didn't really get starched. He just drove for a takedown too hard, and Wright was able to just land elbows, just rain him down, get him out of there. And then he gets outstruck badly against Taffin and Chukwi. Decision loss, ends up only with 22 fantasy points, 40 significant strikes. And then, again, like Joseph Holmes, at 8,600 on this slate, it's gonna be interchangeable. There's gonna be a couple guys in that like 84 to like 8,700 range where you're gonna have to make a decision. And I guess if you can talk yourself into Joseph Holmes, that would be my pick. But he's making his UFC debut. Again, it's Jamie Pickett. I'm not like super high on Jamie Pickett's game, but Joseph Holmes is very green, so it's just hard for me to want to pay up for him. It's not like he's really a pay up option, but at 8,600, he's one of the higher price fighters. He's right in that upper tier for this slate. So again, it's just kind of, I'm not seeing the value really either way, but I also couldn't hate using either guy in a lineup. It's just if you think that Pickett's experience is going to, or UFC experience, I mean, mind you, this is a guy who went 1-2 on the Contender Series. So if you're looking in for that level of competition and experience, you got to go with Pickett. If you're looking for raw attributes and just who I think has a higher ceiling in the UFC, for sure, I think Pickett is probably gone if he loses this fight. It would be Holmes, but it's just not a lot of sample size. It's not something I'm looking to play. And then Bill Algio versus Joanderson Burrito. This is the one that gives me a lot of pause. And I could use either guy in certain lineups. With Bill Algio, he had a really disappointing performance his last time out. Got taken down 8 times against Ricardo Llamas, and they weren't the best takedowns from Llamas. He was just landing them at will, and it kind of exposed a big hole in Algio's game. He is well-rounded, though. He does a lot of things well. He's got very accurate punches. He follows up his combinations beautifully. We're talking 3-4 strike combinations. He always punctuates them, like, body head, lots of variance. He's a BJJ black belt, so he's got good sub game. Fought a very high level of competition, higher level than what's his name, Burrito. He has fought Shane Burgos and Jared Gordon on the regional scene. Ricardo Llamas fight of the night performance in his UFC debut, and he lost that one, but it was closer than I would say the judges' scorecards would indicate. And then he beat Spike Carlisle. Spike Carlisle tends to gas out. He did gas out in that one. Should be noted that Spike Carlisle's been on a rampage since getting cut from the UFC. But if you look at the fantasy output for Bill Algio, he's got 89 significant strikes, 70 significant strikes, 76 significant strikes. Pretty good, all in 3-round decisions. And the one that he won, he scored 85 fantasy points. He hasn't shown a willingness to really do a whole lot of offensive wrestling in the UFC. He's got good clinch work. He's good. He's got good knees, good step-in knees too at range. But the thing I don't like about Algio is he just doesn't seem to be very strong. And Burrito is like a tank. But the problem with Burrito is Contender Series debut, always tricky. And this guy has a lot of explosiveness, a lot of power, but almost too much so. He just throws 100% into every strike. And he does have decent takedown game, but he does seem to slow down as well. And he's just another guy where I can't really get a definitive read on him. But if I had to pick a side in this one for DFS, I would go with Joanderson Burrito. But it could be a fight where it's not one of those where I want to have both guys in the lineup. I pretty much only like doing that for a 5-round fight if we're talking the same lineup. But for one of the upper tier plays this week, I think that Burrito, I don't know. What I don't like about Algio is he has that karate stance and he keeps his hands down. And when you got a guy like Burrito who is going to force you to back up because he just throws so wild and so heavy, I could see him connecting with Algio's chin. And so for that reason, I like Burrito more in this matchup from a DFS perspective. I just see him having a higher likelihood of getting the finish. But at 7,600, Algio could be very live. I'm probably going to do this video right after this, probably my last individual breakdown for this card. But Algio is a live bet opportunity for me. I want to see how Burrito looks after round 1 or a round and a half. I want to see if he starts to slow down. Then it could be all Algio from that point, and he could get a late finish or come on strong. But I think that if I had to pick a side with a finish here, it would be Burrito, and there's not a lot of clear finishes on this card, so I think that Burrito is definitely the name to keep an eye on in this matchup. And this is another interesting one, Dakota Bush against Slava Borshev. I do like Slava Borshev. I picked him. I made a wager on him straight up. Very good striking, trains at Team Alpha Male, so grappling is not his strong suit. It's not his first trade. He's mostly a kickboxer, has a lot of kickboxing matches, but he's got good get-up ability. That's what I like about his game. That's what I noticed about his game. And you're training a Team Alpha Male day in and day out. It's only going to get better. And yeah, the get-up ability I think kind of negates his grappling flaws. And now, granted, on the other side, I think Dakota Bush might be the best grappler he's faced, but I don't see Dakota Bush as like a world beater type grappler. But it is worth noting it's a clash of styles, and at 9K, Slava Borshev, one of the most expensive options for this slate, and it's really tricky to decide whether I want him in my lineup or not, because at 7,200, if Dakota Bush, if his grappling is too much for Borshev, he'll be one of the best values on this card for sure, and he'll look like the minus 200 against Slava. But I just think that Slava's got very good striking. His power seems to add up, and I just don't see Bush as a type of like relentless ground control type guys. We really just got to see how Borshev's submission defense holds up, because Bush might not need long. He's a guy that really tries to just go for the submission quickly. Another submission over position guy, and if he does go for it early, we might not get a chance to see how well Slava can defend out of it. So it's really just another clash of styles, and which side do you want to go with? Which style do you think is going to be too tough to handle? I typically go with grapplers over strikers, but because of the get-up ability I've seen from Borshev, I'm going to go with him. Now, a lot of people think that Borshev is going to get the knockout in this one, and I mean, Dakota Bush, another guy who has a lot of first-round finishes, a lot of one-round fights, so we don't necessarily know what his cardio is like extended either, but I'm just still going to edge out with Slava in this one. But again, it is a little tricky because Borshev is so expensive. Honestly, Dakota Bush might have the better DFS value, but at the same time, Borshev could knock him out relatively easily. I'm just not super, super high on Dakota Bush, but at the same time, it's not fair because we don't really know what we got in him yet. He took a short notice fight against Austin Hubbard, but I just wasn't very impressed with that performance against Hubbard. And that's why I do like Slava in this matchup. But again, he is expensive. And then Caitlyn Chikadze versus Jennifer Maia. Just no play either way on this one for me. Not a lot of fantasy points being scored either way here. If anything, I would go with Jennifer Maia. But you look at Caitlyn Chikadze. Last one a decision against Viviana Rujo, 82 fantasy points in a decision win, 127 significant strikes, and that's a high output for her. 118 against Shevchenko. So yeah, and a couple of these decisions, like the last Jennifer Maia fight, she wins the decision, scores 66 fantasy points. So at 8,900, it's definitely a no play on Caitlyn Chikadze for me. But if you want to go with any side in this one, I would go with Jennifer Maia. And then so for Rogerio Bontorin against Brandon Royval, this is one of the fights where I see not a clear path to a finish, but let's say a more defined path to a finish. Brandon Royval at 8,800, he's one of the more expensive options, but I do like his relentlessness. He's relentless on the feet, relentless on the ground, throws up just submission attempt after submission attempt, just change them together on the bottom, on top, whatever, it doesn't matter. This guy just nonstop pace, and he has the cardio to do it, training out of the Denver area. The one thing is that I want to see is the weigh-ins are going on right now, so I got to see. Bontorin typically has a tough weight cut, And he's a little big for the weight class, but sometimes if he does miss weight, you could say, oh, well, he's going to have a grappling advantage. Like, I don't know. The fights where he misses weight, he seems sluggish. So if it does happen, I'll be even more in on Royval. But at 7,400, if you're looking for Bontarin, you're going to be looking for him to wrestle and just be able to impose it on Royval. But that's just what I don't like. He's kind of like he's kind of measured on the feet. Like, he tries to pick the perfect shot. And you look at the Matt Schnell fight, which is low output all around, but you'd have to give it to Bontarin because he landed the more convincing shots. But I just don't think he's going to be able to have any room to do that against Royval. I think Royval's just going to swarm him. Bontarin is going to take him down probably, but then from there it's just how much do you trust Brandon Royval's jiu-jitsu? And I trust it a lot. So I like Brandon Royval at 8,800. I think he's kind of a must-have in my lineups this week because, again, it's a condensed slate. I don't see a lot of clear finishes. Brandon Royval has a very high finish rate. So I'm going to go with him for sure at 8,800. But Bontarin, 7,400. If you can talk yourself into it, have at it. And then Chase Sherman against Jake Collier, co-main event. What a hell of a co-main event, man, let me tell you. But Chase Sherman at 7,700, no longer on the juice, has not looked good in his last couple fights. Really gassed out in pretty much the last two. Just looked absolutely exhausted after the first round. And, the thing is, though, is both these guys have high output. Chase Sherman is more of a natural heavyweight, has a natural heavyweight frame. Jake Collier, former middleweight, and he still fights like a middleweight. Lots of volume, shifty, but he does slow down. Both these guys have bad cardio. But at 8,500, Jake Collier is expensive, honestly, but on a condensed slate, I think he is worth some consideration. I do think this fight goes to decision. That's the problem. But again, there's just not a ton of clear finishes on this card or even clear paths to a finish. So Jake Collier does have a very high output. Pull up the numbers for you here. 130 significant strikes against Carlos Felipe in a close fight. I think the right decision was made, but argument could be made if Collier just had a little bit more in the second round. I think he wins that fight. 130 significant strikes in a loss against Carlos Felipe, scores 52 fantasy points there. 123 against Gian Vellante, scores 80 fantasy points there. So that's the problem with Collier and Sherman also. It's pretty much all striking. There's not going to be any wrestling, really. I think if anybody was going to wrestle, it would be Collier because he used to wrestle. But, yeah, it's again, it's tricky. There's just you're gonna probably have to have one or two fighters in your lineup this week that you'd rather not have. But at 8,500 for Jake Collier, it's hard to call it worth it, but it's kind of worth it. I don't know. This one's tricky. This whole slate, but Chase Sherman at 7,700. If you wanted to go with it, again, more of a natural heavyweight. Keeps the same output relatively as Collier, but Sherman not on steroids. It's just not the same guy, man. So if I had to pick a side in this one, it'd be Jake Collier, but I couldn't hate it all putting Sherman in your lineup at 7,700. And then so Calvin Kattar against Giga Chikadze. Chikadze, the most expensive fighter on the slate at 9,300, and listen, I get it. I definitely think Giga's going to win this fight. I think Giga's for real. I think his kickboxing's for real. But, people kind of seem to get this idea that he's like a knockout king when it's really just been the last couple fights. Like, I don't know what the hell happened in that Barbosa fight, man. I mean, some people don't like when you say that a guy got caught, and I don't think it means that you're saying that the only reason the knockout happened is because just lucky punch. Like, I'm not saying that's what it means, but it did just seem that Barbosa got caught with a bad shot, and that was just the end of him. He just never recovered from it. I just don't think that Giga is a relentless finisher, but at the same time, his kicking game is second to none. Both head kicks, body kicks, leg kicks, whatever. He's got a wide variety of head kicks that he throws. So, I mean, you're kind of dependent on Giga to get the finish, though. And I know it's a condensed slate, so you kind of want to maybe have one of the 5 rounders. But at 6,900, Calvin Kattar, man, I think recency bias is weighing heavy on that Max Holloway fight. And, Calvin Kattar has never been knocked out, I believe, at least in the UFC. This guy is one of the most durable, tough guys on the roster. He's got great striking, great boxing of his own right. Kind of a slow starter, so I'm probably gonna live bet Kattar if I can. I'll do my betting video tonight, but if I'm gonna bet Kattar, it's gonna be a live bet. But I mean, with a condensed slate, you'll probably have room for Giga if you want to put him in there at 9,300. But I don't know, man. You're depending on a finish against a guy who is really tough to put away, and he's the most expensive fighter. If he does get the finish, great, but he's also going to be very popular. I think a lot of people are going to have him. So you got to keep that in mind. I think it's possible that Kattar ends up in a lot of lineups too, just because he's like one of the cheapest fighters. He was the cheapest option until there were some cancellations and the Brown-Rosa fight got made and the Collier-Kroom fight got made. He was the cheapest option. So, I mean, that's just crazy to me at 6,900, Calvin Kattar. So, for my head-to-head lineup that I did, and again, this is a tricky slate, so no guarantees here, but I tried to get a little creative with it because I'm trying to, I like to structure these for the W. So, this is honestly more of a tournament-heavy lineup because I don't really know what I plan on doing for head-to-heads this week. I usually like doing at least one or two head-to-heads. So if I do change it, I will post it in the comments or the description box. But I like Borshev at 9K. I'm going to take a stab on that just for the finishing upside. I just like him better than Dakota Bush. Again, I went over the arguments. Dakota Bush is totally valid. I will definitely have Dakota Bush in another lineup, or I already do. But I think at 9K it's a little risky, but I'll go with Borshev. Joe Anderson Burrito, same deal, a little risky, but I'm looking for a knockout here, and with the way Algio keeps his hands down, I gotta lean on Burrito. Also, he's got decent takedowns. We've seen that Algio cannot defend takedowns at all. He's good at getting up, but he's not good at defending them. So if I think there's just multiple paths for Burrito here, and to score fantasy points as well. And then T.J. Brown, same deal we talked about earlier. Just can't pass it up relative to the price. Jake Collier, this is where it gets a little tricky. Like, I'm sitting here looking at this, and I feel like I should have one of the 5-rounders in the lineup, but I just feel like everybody's going to have that, man. And you got to try to think outside the box a little bit. Jake Collier, if anybody comes out of the lineup, it's probably going to be him, only because of the reasons, like I was saying, it's price. Heavyweight MMA, doesn't really do anything other than strike. High output, but it's not necessarily how you score points in DFS. So, if anything's subject to change, it's Jake Collier. Brian Kelleher, same deal as TJ Brown, just can't pass it up relative to the price. And then Brandon Royval, went over that. I just like the finishing upside. So, thanks for watching, guys. This is my first time doing this. Or not first time doing DFS, been doing this for a minute, but first time doing this video, and it was a lot of fun to do the research for this. It forces me to do a lot more deep dives on certain fights that I wouldn't necessarily do deep dives on anyway, so it increases my research for the next time these guys fight too. Just, it's more fight tape in the bank, just more knowledge bank. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Sure, subscribe. Take it easy, and good luck.